The story follows Sister Irene as she confronts the malevolent demon Valak, who has resurfaced to terrorize a boarding school in 1950s France.
There's something wrong with the school. There's something here that's not meant to be.
The story follows young Jacques as he does his tasks at a church under Father Noir's supervision in the French town of Tarascon, around 1956. Finding a football in the basement and trying to throw it away turns a routine chore to acquire wine into something terrifying. Fear is aroused when Jack unintentionally makes a strange sound. A troubled man, he warns Father Noir about a possible intruder, and together they look into a strange noise coming from inside the church. Father Noir claims he is being watched by God, but as bright eyes suddenly emerge, he is lifted up and tragically set on fire. Shaken, Jack clutches the priest's rosary. The narrative then shifts to Sister Irene, now residing in serene Italy. Informed by the Mother Superior about a troubled girl named Deborah, Irene engages in a conversation with her, discovering a traumatic event from Deborah's childhood in Mississippi. Her family was attacked by white attackers when she was 4 years old, and their home was burned down. Deborah's father thinks that since her boys are enlisting in the military, she should follow in their devotion to God and serve her nation. Afterwards, the sisters hear the Mother Superior tell them the terrifying story of the Church of Carta. The nuns are slowly destroyed by a malicious demon who takes on their identities in an effort to undermine their faith. The Vatican responds by sending a priest and a nun to battle the demon, who is finally vanquished by applying Jesus' blood. The nun's destiny is still unknown, even after the priest becomes a bishop. Maurice, employed at a school in France, forms a bond with Sophie, a young Irish teacher, and her mother Kate. In a gesture of friendship, Sophie gifts Maurice a bracelet, which is later snatched by another girl who mocks Sophie. Maurice stresses the need of showing love and respect to everyone, even if he is referred to as a simple servant. Maurice is informed of cockroaches in Madame Lauren's chamber and is prompted to investigate after Madame Lauren steps in to guide everyone to class. Maurice exhibits strange behavior, and shortly after, a delivery girl shows up to the school with groceries. She looks to see how he's doing, but is startled by his look. A deadly encounter that breaks someone's neck occurs when she confronts a demon nun, tries to escape, but is imprisoned as the door seals shut. Irene receives word of an upcoming meeting with Mother Superior that evening. Maurice seeks her assistance but undergoes a demonic transformation, startling Irene awake. The next day, the Cardinal briefs Irene on alarming incidents across Europe involving the demon. Hungary, Austria, and Italy are mentioned as suicide hotspots, while Romania is connected to the evil energy moving westward. When Irene is questioned, Father Burke is no longer among us. With reference to her previous miracle in Carta, the church impels her to look into it. She reminds Irene that the church desperately needs another miracle, albeit she hesitates. Sister Deborah gladly follows Irene on her trip to Tarascon, even if she doesn't ask to. A displeased-looking Irene wonders why she is there. When it comes to the idea of changing wine into Jesus' blood, Sister Deborah says she struggles, even if she wants to believe in miracles. Irene responds, asserting that such miraculous events occur through belief, emphasizing that faith in their religion brings about extraordinary manifestations. Meanwhile, Sophie's classmates concoct a pretext to lure her to the forbidden desolate chapel. Defy the Devil is the game they suggest playing inside. One girl maintains that the devil exists regardless of Sophie's incapacity to see him, stressing that her neglect of him does not cause him to vanish. The devil is observing, so Sophie is cautioned not to turn around. The girls leave her alone as they are deep in concentration on a painting. When Sophie eventually realizes she's imprisoned inside, she hears an enigmatic noise, sees a moving statue, and pleads to be let out. It moves, approaches her while hidden by a white cloak, and upon closer examination, reveals herself to be a nun. Just in time, Maurice steps in and unlocks the door. Sophie, frightened, inquires about the incident, prompting Maurice to reprimand the girls who hastily flee. Later, Irene and Deborah arrive in Tarascon. A kind nun tells them that while Mass is still held, Nobody goes since it's widely believed that the church is cursed by the devil. When Irene feels the devil's presence, the church door opens inexplicably. When Jack comes out, he gives Irene a burning rosary. That's the one time Deborah asks how Irene is doing, clearly worried. After they enter Father Noir's chamber, Irene asks about the presence of a boy the night of the tragedy. The nun attests to this, adding that the boy's mother would rather he keep it a secret. Irene then asks if anyone else was in the church during that time, to which the nun discloses the presence of a helper named Frenchie from Romania, who departed after the accident. When Deborah asks Irene about Frenchie outside the chapel, she reveals that his true name is Maurice. He guided them through Carta and came back to save Irene during a possession. Irene realizes that Maurice is being used by the devil. In the meanwhile, Kate asks about the locked church and thanks Maurice for saving Sophie. Kate tells Maurice that explosions killed Madame's son Cedric there. Sophie, watching from a window, sees Maurice looking up. Sophie hears Kate calling, and when she gets closer, she sees her mother going upstairs. Sophie follows her upstairs and finds the evil nun, who lets out crows before disappearing. Disturbed, Sophie descends, only for the nun to reappear. Kate arrives with other students and Sophie witnesses the nun's eerie figure on the wall. Later, Irene and Deborah head to their reserved hotel, only to discover that their names are inexplicably absent from the register. Irene goes outside while Deborah talks with the manager. Irene sees Jack tightening his shoelaces in the middle of the chaos of kids rushing around. She asks about the rosary from that terrible night and introduces herself. Jack reveals that Father Noir had it and that he took it out of fear. Jack leaves with them as other kids return, so Irene is taken aback when they mysteriously disappear. Subsequently, Irene finds Jack outside a magazine store. A magazine's pages begin to flip on their own and come together to form the nun's picture. Irene is alarmed when she hears a disturbance and looks about, but she discovers nobody. Approaching the apparition, the demonic nun attacks, triggering a vision of a man gouging out a nun's eyes. The same nun reappears, holding a box, and Irene, witnessing her eyes gleaming, succumbs to unconsciousness. Faced toward the chapel entrance, Madame Lauren sees a possessed Maurice. Taken aback, he spins around and walks away, leaving Madame Lauren to hear her son's voice coming from the next door. Cedric is inside when she opens it. A violent attack on Madame Lauren results from the nun's hand landing on Cedric's shoulder. Something drops and she's killed. When Deborah asks Irene what happened the night before, she wakes up the next day. Irene clarifies that the devil's plan was revealed to her in a vision. When this object is discovered, Maurice will suffer a terrible fate that he is being used to uncover. Irene was asleep when Deborah mentioned that Jack handed her a rosary. Recognizing the mark but unable to pinpoint its origin, Irene struggles to recall where she encountered it. Deborah remembers noticing a resemblance in a picture of one of the demon's casualties, suggesting a possible relationship. In the meanwhile, Kate discovers Madame's lifeless body in the church, which shocks her. The police then remove Madame's remains, and Kate notifies Maurice that Sophie has vanished. Maurice assures Kate that he will find Sophie. Maurice looks everywhere for Sophie and eventually finds her, striking up a discussion. Sophie reveals that Madame was not often at the chapel and that she felt uncomfortable at the institution. When you ask Sophie if she saw or heard anything strange, she confesses to having a strange sensation but doesn't mention any specific sights or noises. Irene and Deborah make their way to the Pied de Papes and present the rosary to the librarian. He recognizes the symbol as St. Lucy's family crest. Irene learns, when she considers her vision, that the devil is chasing St. Lucia's eyes. The librarian gives background information, stating that after Lucia passed away, her family preserved a holy artifact, the eyes of Saint Lucia. Deborah asks the library about the demon's intentions with the eyeballs, and the librarian Frank confesses not knowing. He discloses that the demon was once a fallen angel who was spurned by God and is now striving to retrieve abilities that he has lost. Irene concludes that her family has been the target of the everlasting devil since St. Lucia's day. The librarian asserts that Irene must employ the eyes to banish the demon back to hell. Irene, however, points out the challenge of not knowing the relic's location. The monk Jean-Paul Reder, who had the eyes, sent a letter to the Vatican describing their interment in his monastery an hour distant, the librarian reveals. Regretfully, the wine corporation eventually purchased the monastery, which is now used as a boarding school. When Irene goes back to school, she shares a piece of her family history. Her highly devout mother said that she had visions and heard from God. But ultimately, Irene's father brought her to a doctor because he was dubious and thought her mother could be mad or ungodly. Irene's mother was then mysteriously whisked away and was never seen again. In the meanwhile, something strange happens to Maurice. While he's in the company of Sophie and Kate, they observe an inverted cross on Maurice's neck and an ominous presence. They both feel frightened as the nun appears behind Sophie. Maurice tries to run away with them. Maurice is taken aback when Irene and Deborah show there. Irene gives him a firm warning to stay away even though she recognizes him and says she can assist. She believes the monster is living inside of him, something Maurice strongly disagrees with. Finally, he gives in to the demon's might and attacks Irene, throwing her away with force. When Deborah tries to step in, she is also ignored. Irene invokes the power of God, commanding the demon to depart from Maurice, causing a noticeable weakening. Taking advantage of the situation, Deborah quickly knocks Maurice out, and they bind him. Kate and Sophie follow them to the chapel, where Irene explains their search for a relic that a monk has concealed. Sophie, looking at the mosaic, talks about the terrible goat whose eyes glow red in the daylight. Stepping outdoors, Deborah uses her flashlight to shine light on the goat's eyes in the mosaic, the location where St. Lucy's eyes are buried. They start excavating, and Sophie subtly notes that the goat has vanished from the mosaic when they uncover the artifact. They find out, but their victory is short-lived since Deborah comes upon a scared girl who makes a reference to someone upstairs. Witnessing a demonic goat advancing towards the girl, Deborah intervenes, rescuing her and securing her in the dormitory. The demon relentlessly pounds on the door. An unseen force hurls girls about, and Maurice callously tosses Kate aside. He attacks Irene in the pandemonium that follows, which causes the relic to collapse. Maurice follows Sophie as she grabs the chance to flee with the artifact. Deborah takes cover in a room, watching over the girls. The girls discover something unsettling as they try to enter Madame's room through a vent. "I saw Madame standing there," one girl says. A hideous swarm of cockroaches pours out of Madame's mouth as she notices her and pulls her inside. As Maurice pursues Sophie obstinately, she takes refuge in the bell tower. Sophie feels safe and shielded by the relic as it begins to shine. When the bell tower collapses, Irene rushes to Sophie's rescue. While Sophie is rescued, a wooden plank becomes lodged due to a rope, preventing further structural collapse. Suddenly, Maurice arrives just in time to catch Sophie as the rope opens, resulting in his own fall. As Irene walks inside the structure, Sophie greets her and says she is St. Lucy's eyes. Irene uses the relic on Maurice as he stands up, causing blood to flow from his nose and eyes. Maurice begs Irene to stop, saying that he is going to die soon, and then he collapses. Irene, thinking he is dead, is inconsolable and thinking back on their times together. Maurice abruptly comes to and grabs the relic, which seems to burn in his grasp. Maurice's eyes light up as the monster regains its strength. The devil appears as a nun, and the demonic goat rushes in the direction of the girls. They manage to enter the chapel and secure the door. Meanwhile, the demon, in the guise of the nun, viciously strangles Deborah with a chain. Sophie tries to flee, but Irene steps in to help her and finds the nun obstructing her escape. Irene is elevated by the nun, who then lights her. Remarkably, St. Lucy's granddaughter Irene escapes unharmed. The demon becomes even more enraged as she stumbles into the wine-sodden floor. Deborah describes this as a remarkable incident that she witnesses. Irene hears Sophie cry and runs to help after noticing the wine fall. The demon traps Sophie, but Maurice holds back from harming her. Irene and Deborah pray, turning the wine into Jesus' blood, which banishes the demon Valak back to hell. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.